Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the SheEO Lead-In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of SheEO Lead-In. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights, despite their sometimes rocky paths, and found a way to lead in. Today, we are here with Leatha King, the Chief Operating Officer from Cartmart Incorporated. How are you today, Leatha?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Great. I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about what you do every day, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood? I'd like to have listeners know a little bit more about you before you became a very strong SheEO.
Okay. Well, I have a funny story to share with you this morning. My family thinks it's very funny, but I personally don't think it is. But when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my family and I were going out for what was supposed to be a fun-filled night of bowling. And apparently I wasn't very good at bowling. And this was before they had bumper bowling. And when I threw my ball down the bowling alley lane, it continued to go into the gutter. And I was so driven for success that when I wasn't, I had a little bit of a meltdown, and my father had to remove me from the bowling alley. And my family still teases me about that to this day.
So tell me about your siblings. Are you an only child? Do you have a couple, or how does that look in your family?
I have an older sister. She's 6 years older than I am.
I have an older sister, 4 years, and then a younger brother, 4 years. So I'm in the middle.
Middle child.
I am, yes. So they all keep teasing you about this.
Yes.
Because they thought it was funny that you had such a meltdown.
Yeah. You know, that I wasn't going to accept failure. And at the time, the only way that I knew how to deal with that was, to have a little bit of a temper tantrum.
I think we all did. I remember one time I broke my crayons. I don't remember why, but I remember I broke all my crayons, and then I went, what was I thinking? I guess that's kind of how life is. I mean, we go through tough things. We have things that we don't excel at. You just look for something else, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So I have a question. One word. What is one word that really describes you in a nutshell?
There are so many words that describe me, but if I had to pick just one, I would say I'm driven. I think that my family and the people that I work with would agree with that. I'm very results-oriented. And an example of that is when I first started college, I had to take intermediate algebra. And my entire life, I had been a terrible math student. But in order to get my business degree, I had to pass that class. And so I took the class and I worked really hard, but I couldn't understand the concept and I failed. And I had a choice to make, give up a college education or do what I needed to pass that class. So I was very driven and told myself that if I have to take that class 5 times until I pass, that's what I'm going to do. So I hired a tutor.
I was going to ask you that. Yep.
And I joined a study group and I retook that class. And not only did I pass the second time around, but I got an A in that class.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, I think that's one of the things that our listeners need to hear about more is, we're not good at everything.
Right.
Like there is not one person that is really good at everything. Even if you are one of the most intelligent people in the room, a lot of times you might be lacking in your social skills or your athletic skills or whatever. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anyone that's good at everything.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I try to surround myself with people that, have different things that they can bring to the table. So together, we are an amazing team. They have things that they excel in that I don't, and vice versa.
Yeah. What's interesting, when I was in my early 20s, I was selling new homes. And I remember one of my favorite parts of the job was when I would see people walking through the door and not knowing anything about them and what they were going to bring to the table, who they were going to be, and hearing their stories, because I always felt like it was one of those things, almost like opening a Christmas present. You never know what you're going to get. And I found it to be really interesting because, again, just hearing different people's perspective, people that you might not ever meet in your life, except for them walking in looking for a new home. I felt like that was a really cool way to get a lot of different people's perspective and hear about, what they're doing in their lives and all this. I remember this one man, he was so nice. I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but he drove up and he had a very old car. And I remember thinking, I wonder what his story is. That man had $600,000 in the bank that he had saved because he had been very intentional about wanting to pay cash for a house. And, back then it was, he was able to do that. But it was such an interesting story to hear of why he did that and how he did that. And it was, and I just think all of these, talking to different people and really, just kind of paying attention, listening to them, helps us all kind of shape us to who we become at the end. I tell people all the time, I'm going to be learning something until the day I die.
I agree.
Just really talking to people and listening. I think listening is a really important skill in leadership for sure.
Yes.
So let's shift a little bit to Cartmart and what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, to understand what I do, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the company.
Sure.
So Cartmart has been in business for over 60 years. We are a family-run organization with about 100 employees and 9 store locations. And we distribute golf carts and low-speed vehicles. And when I first started in the industry, I was new to the industry, and I thought all we did was sell recreational golf carts, like the kind you would find on the golf course. But we do so much more than that. The industry has really grown, and we serve as a form of last mile transportation, especially in the commercial space. Think municipalities, resorts, and universities who rely on these carts to perform the work in their own businesses. So outside of selling new and used carts, we also have 3 other elements that make up our business: parts, service, and event rentals. And my role in the organization is to manage and oversee the day-to-day operations. I'm specifically responsible for human resources, parts, service, rentals, and more. I wear a lot of hats, and no 2 days are ever the same. Some days I may come in and I'm helping a customer, or I'm working with human resources on recruiting and hiring. And other days I may come in and I'm helping our transportation department with our fleet, or I'm negotiating a contract. So no 2 days are the same, but essentially every aspect of operations falls under my umbrella.
Well, that sounds it sounds like a very interesting job, because I'm guessing that most days never look the same.
It is an interesting job, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy, is that there is diversity in my job, and you never know what the day is going to be like.
Well, and, too, I think that women as overall have a really good way of being flexible, and just whatever comes at you, you just kind of figure it out.
Absolutely.
So what do you specifically think fulfills you most at work?
I would say I am fulfilled. It allows me to be creative with the strategies that we implement, and it allows me to communicate and work with our employees, our vendors, and the public. And I will say that I have grown professionally because as our business has grown, so have I. There are things that I haven't done in the past that are new to me, like opening a new store location, the acquisition of a new store location outside of California, and managing those employees outside of California with different regulations.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty challenging. So tell me a little bit about the industry, because I think it is changing a little bit. What's happening as far as the low emissions vehicles and kind of what that looks like? Because when you look at carts specifically, and then the what did you call them?
Low speed vehicles.
Yeah.
So a low speed vehicle is actually able to be driven on the street,
Right.
With being under 40 miles per hour.
Okay.
But there are certain regulations that you have to have on these cars in order to be compliant to drive on the streets to meet the DOT regulations.
Seatbelts probably and that
Seatbelts,
sort of thing.
windshields, other safety measures as well.
And I think that's probably still growing. And I think probably in the next 5 to 10 years, that'll be a totally different industry.
Especially here in California, because after
Definitely.
2035, you're not going to be able to buy gas vehicles.
Right. So do you have both gas and electric now?
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And then the gas actually go a little bit faster than the electric, correct? Or
Yes.
no? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think that'll probably end up changing too. I myself have a Tesla, and when I'm driving it, I'm like, well, it just goes so fast. Not, of course, that I'm speeding or anything. But, I just think the technology being that it's an actual motor, not like a motor with gas and everything.
Right.
It's more of a, I just feel like they just are much quicker. Anyway, so tell me a little bit about challenges in your business, and how do you address those?
Oh, let's see. Some of the challenges that we have had after the pandemic, when things started to normalize, one of our biggest challenges was attracting employees.
Yeah.
I think through the pandemic, many people found other ways to make a living, and many people reevaluated their life situation and decided not to rejoin the workforce. And so, we had to get creative and try to find some ways to attract employees, because let's face it, it's a tough job market out there, and there are more jobs than there are employees to fill those jobs.
I know that is so weird, and I'm glad you brought that up. Do you think it's now that there are younger employees out there that are applying, or is it older folks?
We have a mix. We have a mix that apply at Cartmart. Yeah.
And normally, under normal, sort of circumstances, do you think people stay with the company for a very long time? And has there been a shift in that?
We have many employees that have been employed at Cartmart 20 plus years. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah. So and your newer employees, do you feel like they're going to stay with the company longer, or do you think it's sort of a transition? Because I feel like there is a big shift in what's happening in people and their careers.
I agree. I agree. When I first started in my career, most people stayed with one company for years and maybe their entire life.
Right.
And now what we're seeing is a 2-year average. Most employees are only working at a company for about 2 years before they move on to the next. But I certainly hope that's not the case with us.
Yeah,
I hope
definitely.
they really enjoy working with us and decide to make it a career. One of the things that we've done is we have what's called a tier program in our company. And so we disclose what different jobs make, what the employees in that particular department make, and what the duties are in that particular department. So if someone is tired of turning a wrench and now they want to have an office job, there's an opportunity for them to transition within our organization. So we really want employees to come and talk to us if they're tired of doing what they're doing, so we can retain them.
That's interesting. My 23-year-old just recently got a career job, not like a short-term job. And it's interesting because her company has the same philosophy, and they actually they say, hey, you know what? This person's going to be on vacation or is sick. Do you want to try this other job just to, experience that might be a place for them to move to. Yeah. I think that is a great way of doing it. And, in my career, we do that as well. I think it's important to expose people to different things.
Right.
Because when you're happier at work, obviously you do a better job and you're more committed and all of that. So I think it is important.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about role models. Do you have any that you can specifically say that person really shaped me? Like for me, I look and I think there are a lot of different people that have shaped me over the years, men and women. And, tell me a little bit about what that looks like for you.
So my mother is my role model. She has taught me so many things over the years. But when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mother and father got divorced. And my mother had to raise 2 daughters on her own with a very limited income. And she knew that she wanted a better life for us. So she pursued her education and she worked a full-time job, went to college classes in the evening. And for years of my childhood, I remember my mom either being at work, at school, studying, or raising my sister and I. And I know that wasn't easy for her. That wasn't something that she accomplished in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. That was years of a very demanding schedule. But what it taught me is that none of us have to accept our situation, and that if we're willing to put in the hard work and we have the determination, anything is possible.
Let's go back to your word. Driven.
Absolutely.
Driven. I think your mom was driven too. And my parents got divorced when I was 11, but kind of the same, very similar situation. And it does shape us, because when you see your mom, and there were 3 of us, but when you see your mom going and trying to make herself better by the next step and the next step, and really, putting a lot of time and effort in those different things that she needed to do to make it happen. It is very inspiring.
Absolutely.
Very inspiring. I mean, I would say probably the biggest life lesson that my mom gave me too was to be driven and to not give up. Never give up. It's just not, I always say failure's not an option. You just have to keep going and moving forward. So, and it might be sometimes baby steps, sometimes it's leaps and bounds. It's going to look different, I think, at every point in your life, but always moving forward.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about barriers. What are some significant barriers that you've experienced?
I would say the biggest barrier I've experienced was earlier on in my career, when I was climbing the corporate ladder and I was working, probably, 50 to 60 hours a week. And I was also raising my daughter. I felt like the worst mother because there were so many activities and events that I had to miss. But one of the things that I did to overcome that barrier is I relied on my tribe, being my family and my friends, to help fill in when I couldn't be there.
Definitely. How old is your daughter now?
30.
Aww. So cute.
Yeah, and I have a new grandson that's 1 year old.
Oh my gosh. I'm not a grandparent yet, so I can't wait until that happens. But, I can wait because my kids aren't in long-term relationships or anything. But how awesome is that to actually, and you probably explained to her, hey, listen, I've got this going on right now in my life, and, I can't be here at some of these things. I think as women, we have a really tough time not being present for that, especially because of the gender roles that kind of have been, through our parents and all of that, and society, of course. But, every family looks different. And I think that is something that we all need to always remember, is what's right for your neighbor might not be right for you.
That's right.
And, not to be so hard on ourselves. But I think as women, we really tend to say, okay, well, this might have been a gender thing that was normal. back, when our parents were young. Like my mom always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but that's not right for everyone. And, when she needed to go out and do something different, she did. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about failures. We all have failures. We all have successes. Why don't you share some things with our listeners today that you might find inspiring, or they might find inspiring?
Well, I have worked for many years, so I certainly have had my fair share of failures. What I will say about failures, and I really don't like using that word because I think that it's an opportunity for us to grow and learn.
Definitely.
I'm in operations, and we are constantly deploying new processes and procedures. And what works today may not work tomorrow. And even with the best planning, there's failures when we implement these processes. And what we do is just get together, regroup, make changes to those processes, and redeploy them. And oftentimes, we have to do that 3 or 4 times before we're successful.
I love that. And, I'm in government. I don't want to talk a lot about that, but I think that's one of the failures of government is that when they try something and they see that it's not working, they can't go back because that actually is admitting they're wrong. But I think totally different than that. I agree with what you're saying, and that is, you know what? If it doesn't work the first time, you tweak it and you tweak it and tweak it until it actually does what you want it to do at the end of the day.
That's right.
For it to be successful. And that's one of the things that I really like about private industry. And, just kind of a question about that. Have you seen a difference between like large corporate companies and then like a smaller company that's family owned like Cartmart?
Absolutely. I would say, working in corporate, the bigger you get, the less family feel there is.
Yeah.
You become more of a number, unfortunately. There's just too many people to really have that personal relationship. So working for a smaller operation allows us to build those relationships with our employees.
Well, and also create that innovation.
That's right.
That continues to, you go, okay, that didn't work. Let's tweak it a little bit and,
Yes.
just keep moving again, forward. But also it saves time and effort and all of that too on top of it. So how do you measure success? Because that is probably a very loaded question.
I measure success by the relationships I have with our team and how the people around me feel. I have a genuine interest in all of our employees and want them to feel supported and cared about. If they are happy and successful, I consider that a success.
And that's easy to tell. There
Absolutely.
definitely is. And I do think being at the top of an organization or in the, upper management and all of that, I think that your attitude really affects everyone around you. So when you have a good attitude, everyone seems happier and
Yes.
they're more willing to, put in the time and the effort that needs to happen, when you've got a lot going on. Because I imagine like with my business, there are times where I'm so much busier. And then there are times that are, you can take a deep breath.
Yes.
And so really during those times of really high stress and very, it's like go time, you've got something you're right in the middle of and it's a big deal. I think when you're happy and you really have a team that's committed, that you're committed to also, it really, provides that leadership to get them to put everything in just like you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So let's talk a little bit about awards and recognitions. And what are some that you're proud of that your company has received?
So there are Cartmart has been the recipient of so many awards, but there are 2 that I'm most proud of. The first is the Inc. 5000 for one of the fastest growing companies, and we received that award for 5 consecutive years from 2017 through 2021. And I started with the company in 2016, like I said, and I got to see all of that growth.
Yeah.
And the second award was I nominated our CEO, Brian Rott, for CEO of the Year through the San Diego Business Journal Association, and he won. And
That's
it was
awesome.
such a proud moment for not only Brian, but our entire organization.
Oh, yeah. The team definitely gets recognized for all of that, too.
Yes.
And, the fact that it was his grandfather that started that company, correct?
Yes, Ben Bellman.
Yes. So what a great story. So what does it mean for you to work at Cartmart?
It's been a privilege working with Cartmart. I have spent my entire career helping scale businesses through operational support, and it has been very rewarding and fulfilling to see all of the growth. As I mentioned earlier, we now have 100 employees, but when I started, we only had 50.
Oh, I was wondering about that. That's great.
Yeah, and we only had 3 store locations, and we've grown to 9, expanding outside of California into parts of the Southeast and Cabo San Lucas.
Cabo San Lucas. Wait, do you ever have to go business travel there?
I have. I've been down there a couple of times, and I look forward to going back.
What a wonderful experience that must be, too. And, also really being innovative, because going to another country has got to be have challenges for sure.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn.
Yeah, definitely. So lessons learned. Can you tell me maybe 3 lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share with young women that you learned and how they might apply them?
So I would call it advice, and it's the same advice that I've given to my daughter. The first would be to get a college education. I think that sets the foundation for success. In our household, it was non-negotiable. College was not an option, but mandatory. I started talking to my daughter about going to college at a very early age. So when she graduated from high school, it was just very normal and natural for her. I think that a college education not only teaches us a subject matter, but it also teaches us things that we can bring into our work life, such as critical thinking and time management. Number 2 would be to be a lifelong learner and remain relevant. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. There's books, if you commute like I do. There's books on tape. There's certification programs. There's peer groups. And my favorite, podcasts.
Nice.
Yeah, so because I commute a couple of hours every day, on the weekends, I'll look through different podcasts that I want to listen to on my commute. And that's one of the ways that I get my education. And number 3 would be stepping outside of your comfort zone, like me doing this podcast.
Oh, it's not so bad, is it? It's not so bad.
I will say it's a first.
Well, there's always got to be a first time for everything.
That's right.
I definitely feel the same way. Stepping outside of your comfort zone is really important, because that's when you really grow. And that's when I always tell people, well, especially young people, I talk to a lot of kids in high school, and I'm always telling them, you know what, when you're a little bit uncomfortable, definitely not unsafe, but a little bit uncomfortable, that's when you really are stretching yourself.
Yes.
And that's when you learn things about yourself that maybe you didn't know. And I think it really helps you become the best version of yourself, which is really important. I'm always striving for that. And I always tell young people, you need to find a career and a path that you're really satisfied with, because then it doesn't feel as much like work. And, you'll definitely have your ups and downs, but if you really love what you're doing, the tough times seem a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you don't love what you're doing, be okay with changing that.
That's right. That's right. Try something. And I think people are doing that more, kind of back
Yes.
to our earlier in our conversation. The 2 years now being that was so unheard of back, when our parents were, and we were kids, we were watching them. My dad worked in the same career and essentially the same job for almost my entire childhood. And even as he made one shift, but it was only with a different company.
Yeah.
But literally almost my entire life, and, what I recall of my dad working was always in the same industry. Mm-hmm. Just, one shift with the actual company. But, he never just tried anything else. And who knows, maybe he would have, really mastered something else. It's hard to know. And I love that people are doing that now, because I think, it just really, you find a different path that you're really satisfied with, and that's important. So let's talk about a bit about what's next in your journey.
So I hope continuing to do the work that I love and help support Cartmart through operational support. And more specifically, we just signed paperwork at our new location in North Carolina. So I'll be busy with the tenant improvements and hiring and getting that store up and running.
Nice. How many people are you going to be hiring there?
I think in total we'll have about 7 employees to start with.
Right.
And then as we grow, obviously we'll need to add more.
So that's got to be a lot of different regulations too that you have to get up to speed on.
Absolutely.
Well, I wish you all the best of luck with that. That's kind of a new adventure for you this year. Well, best of luck to you. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself today and your journey and the exciting and really ever-changing, I would say, business of Cartmart and all of the things that you've been able to do there. And I really didn't realize that in 5 years is it 5 years that you've been with the company now?
No, I've been with the company for 7 years.
7 years, and you've doubled in size.
Yes.
That's pretty significant.
Yes.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with SheEO host Rebecca Jones.